Welcome to a lighting guide for the game created by C.L StudioWorks called epicthemusical. So, if you're watching this, we're going to assume that you have joined the group and have basic knowledge on how to walk around. But if you are unsure, we will flash up a guide on screen, just a short video showing you how to join the group, because you will need the group to access the backstage. So once you're in the group, come to this corner, enter. So come over to this backboard over here and claim the tech role. Once you've claimed the tech role, you can stroll over to this room called the tech booth, which also has a yellow line going in, and you will be in here. Another way you can access this room without claiming the tech role is to purchase a game pass as shown on your screen. You can find it in the game's store page. So once you are in here, you will see a multitude of things. In this video, we are not going to be talking about these two or these buttons, but you should have a general understanding that just green is on, red is off. Similarly, green for curtain means it's down, red for curtains means it's up. And house lights, green is on, red is off. Yeah, so we're going to focus on the lighting in this video. If you want a video on these, on when to cue these scenes, you can let us know below. But yes, first of all, enter Flux kit. Just click on it, you'll go in. So we will be going through a few of the lights today. So our lights are the profile, JDC, full spotlight, par, and pyrotechnics. So the first thing we're going to go through is our par. So the par is the main lighting. If you didn't see how I access this page, simply click on main and scroll till you find the light. So when we look at the par, there's going to be quite a few options and it's usually overwhelming. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the left side of our screen, which has OX, hold, and bump. So as the name implies, O turns it on. So now a common misconception is that you have to press kill to turn off the lights. That is not the case. You simply right click the same button that you turned on the light with to turn it off. So O is binded to the left click and X is binded to the right click. For a hold, this is simply just a press and a hold. So long you're holding the left click, it'll be on. Once you take it off, it'll be off. For a bump, this will just boost, turn on the lights, turn off lights. So it's the same as OX in this case. Left click turns on, right click turns off. Now we get into the more important part, because a lot of people don't know this exists. If you see here, there's a blank area, but click on it and it'll open fade. It's very important because fade allows your lights to look nicer and less jarring, because comparing this to this, worlds are different. So fade is the same binding for all these buttons, but generally if you're going to do lighting, I would suggest you use fade instead of just snap. Although snap does have its use cases, because certain scenes do require the light to turn on, turn off, or flash like the thunder and lightning. But fade would be a very nice thing for you to use in general for your lighting. Now we have quite a few options. So first of all, PWM. It's a very commonly used one for people to turn on the light. What I say is don't use it. We will cover how to make lights dimmer with just the normal on and off. You do not need to use PWM to make your lights dimmer. That's her, however. also does the same thing, so please do not use these. Random is fine because it is a strobe effect or flash effect, depends on what you call it, so if that's helpful. So you can play with all of these cues, but be aware that majority of the cues along with the rest of the lights and their cues do not work because of the way these lights are currently coded into the game. In the future, hopefully this gets fixed so that you can use more of these cues in your show. But with this out of the way, you don't, for these buttons down here, mode and direction, so that's what DR stands for, ignore these because they have no purpose in this case. We're now going to come over to the branch. That the branch is essentially the page where you get to see all of these color options. So what we're going to cover is our color wheel on the left. So right, how about simply click on the wheel and it changes the color. It's pretty self-explanatory. You have to press and hold the click and drag slightly just for it to register. But yeah, you don't need to move it too much, just slide drag. So similarly to how the lights turns on and off, you can also use fade, which usually also turns out looking nicer because it doesn't seem so jarring to just change. So another feature that the color wheel offers is pulse. What pulse does is it maintains the original color, in this case red, but if you change to a different color, blue, it will pulse blue, in this case show blue for a second before changing back to red. So this is actually a pretty cool feature if you want to just have short bursts of color. Another thing you can do is scroll down where there will be, make sure you turn off pulse, but you can scroll down and you can trigger these different options. In this case, you do not see the pair as I mentioned earlier because of how the game is coded with the light. But on the topic of lights and colors, earlier I mentioned that we can make the light dimmer without using PWM, and this is how. There is a white slider over here. Drag it down and select a new color. That is the brightness slider of the color. So one thing that you will need to do is when you adjust the brightness on this, you will need to click on the color again so that it changes. Another key thing to note is that this slider is a global slider, although it may seem different on a different panel because it has different positions on the slider. The most recent slider position will be used for all lights. So if you dim down the light a lot, when you move on to another light, make sure that you have repositioned this. Even if it's just moving it back to the same position, you just want to move it so it triggers and looks brighter. That way you can tell it's just brightness on this. So now we move on to the sliders. There's a bunch of sliders over here, which are really useful. First thing is dimmer. Actually, first thing, these 5 alphabets will generally not be used, so you don't really have to bother with them. Just focus on this. If you see those numbers appear, just scroll back up to this page. So the first thing is dimmers, or dim. Dim is essentially the way this light works. So let's say we use AB1. See the rate it is turning on and off at. If you bring down the dimmer by pressing, holding, and sliding, it slows it down. So the lower the number, the slower it goes. Likewise, the higher the number, the higher it goes. So I would suggest you don't do something like this in most cases, unless it's a fight scene or something dramatic, because this can be photosensitive for epileptic viewers. Yeah, that's another thing to keep in mind. Viewers with epilepsy, you may want to warn them. This is not a must, but if you're going to have a scene with a lot of flashing light, you may just want to let people know in case they're unaware that it could trigger an epilepsy. But keeping our lights on, we move on to strobe. So that's where random comes in. Similarly, bringing down the strobe number lowers the rate of the strobe. Bringing up the strobe number increases the rate of the strobe. Now we have color. Color in this case applies to our triggers with the word color on them. So, like the previous two sliders, the lower the number, the slower it is. The faster the number, the faster it is. Lastly, you have fade. So this fade applies to two things: our on-off fade in here and our color fade in here. So if I bring this down to 55, the light now turns off and on much slower, and the colors take longer to change as well. So generally, I personally stick with about 85 to 80 for the fade, because it just seems more fadey. Yeah. But there are scenes, for example, the finale scene, where you want to dim out the light slowly so that it dims out as they finish the song. So you can actually drop the fade down to not 20 or just really no number. It's up to you, and it will have a really slow, nice fade out. Last thing over here is the intensity. That's what INTSC means. So what I will say is that generally, you can just leave this as what it is. Is what it essentially does is just makes your light brighter or darker. But we already do that with our color slider. But let's say you don't like the color slider brightness adjustment, you can also just use this. The lower the number, the darker it is. And one thing to note is that by default, it is 0, but it is actually at 100. So it displays 0, but the light's on. By default, is at 100. So don't worry if you see it as 0, unless there's nothing showing up, then you probably want to fix that. So that's how you do the par. Now moving on to our second light. So go back to main, fixtures. Next we have our profiles. So I'm not going to go through wow snap and fade works, but I will be showing you the difference between these two on-off features. First one gives you a circular beam. So essentially a straight line, although we can change this later, but it projects a nice flat light. If you want for more full effect, you can use the second one. This has a design to it. So yeah, as you can see, if we make it shoot out in the audience, it will look something like this as compared to this. But it's up to you which one you prefer. Hold and bump have the same inner workings as the par. Now, below we actually have two new options. We have pan and tilt. Firstly, you will see a number. When you hover over the button, scrolling will change this number. This number is the angle the light will tilt when you press it. In this case, if I press pan, you don't see anything happen with the lights because pan is the rotation, horizontal, not vertically. If we want to show it, we can do a tilt, and now you will see the light moving. Reset will bring it back to a 0, so you don't need to tinker around with it. Another thing you want to note is that pan works as a set number. So if you do pan 30, it will pan to 30. Pan 10, it will do pan 10. Whereas for tilt, it adds on to the previous number. So if I do pan 30, tilt 30, and do tilt 30 again, it tilts towards that direction. And you may have noticed that I was able to do left right with this. So left click will make it go one way, while right click will make it go another way. Similarly for tilt, tilt up in this case would be left click, tilt down would be right click. You can experiment with this on your own. As mentioned earlier, you have quite a few options here. Not all will work, some will work, and Don't try to turn on all of them at the same time because that's not good. There are also two effects that you have, which is flush and blind. After blind, you do need to reset it so that it comes back. So a few things that I usually do would be groups, because it gives a nice tilt up and down, or you can do circle, but circle isn't as effective because half the time it's not visible. Now this is where DIR actually matters, because now we have movement cues. Let's say I do circle 1, so you see how it goes in that pattern. If I do like left click it, it now goes in the opposite direction. So DIR is the direction that the cues go in. That's just a neat little thing to know. Now we move on to our branch panel. This has the same system along with this. That's the part, so we will not be covering that. You can hit back to an earlier part of the video to learn about this color wheel and the brightness light. But now we have a much more complicated setup over here, because we have new features like iris and move. So move would be the movement speed. So if I bring it up, you'll see it goes really quick. If I bring it down, you see it goes slowly. Yeah. Next thing, iris. So we have a few iris cues over here: iris AV, iris chase, and iris wave. Iris wave does not work. But how iris AB works is that it essentially changes the whiteness of the light. Now, in this guide, we will teach you how to actually change this to your preference. So the white or the width of the light without having to use this cue, because it's very common as well that I see in game that people use this just to make the lights bigger or smaller. So if you bring down this, same as all the other sliders, it makes the iris slower. You increase it, it shoots really fast. And now, this is the interesting part. If we right click any of these sliders, it brings up a new page. So I'm going to assume that most of you have never done this before, hence do not know of its existence. Fade slider here works like the par, so we will not be covering that. Spin does not work as of now because of how the game is coded. But our main focus is zoom. Zoom is the star of the show here. By dragging the slider up, it makes your lights wider. Dragging it down makes them thinner. So now you can precisely decide how wide you want your lights to be instead of trying to use these chase options to get your iris right. And to go back to the original page you see here, just right click any of the sliders. Yeah, I think that's the one thing that a lot of you will actually be interested to find out, because it's really helpful. Also, if you aren't already aware, W here just means white. You can change it back to white. Now, our next light, the JDC. So this is what is commonly known within this community as the secondary main light, with par being the main light. The reason for pars being the main light is because of its coverage of the stage, where it shines and illuminates most of it. Whereas our JDC is more for background lighting. In this case, on and off here look similar in the first glance, but they do work differently. The left on option turns on the main light. The second on option turns on the line in between the light. So, what you need to note, the color wheel only affects the main light. The line is permanently white and cannot be changed. Again, avoid using PWM, because that does not help. Cues that are really helpful that I commonly use is random, because that just gives a nice strobe, and groups, because another thing that has been seen is usage of ramps to create this on and off effect. But if you wanted a nice clean on off fade that goes on loop, use groups. It is really helpful. This groups hue can be adjusted with the dimmer. Random can be used with the strobe, and the color options here can be controlled with the color slider. In this case, move is not necessary. Because of the positioning of these lights, you will never use a moving hue, nor are there any hues that do function. So this is irrelevant. You do see here that there's a tilt, which you can tilt the lights away, as you can see, but they are generally unideal because of the way these lights are placed. So just keep them in the default position. Now move on to this page. Generally, there is nothing different. There is no special right click that you can do here. So you can just export the cues and export the combinations. The last thing is just the cues below, or these are the effects, which the scatter button does work. But there isn't really a situation where you would use this, because you could also replicate the same thing with just random. But it's up to you, ultimately. It's your choice, and you are the tech. Now, a follow spotlight. This is something that is pretty crucial. Although it doesn't seem like it does a lot on stage, but when you see it in action, like what we show on screen right now, it makes the character stand out, and it helps you pinpoint who you should be looking at, especially if there's a lot of characters on stage, and the people who are brand new to the show have no clue whose voice is linked to which character. So inside this follow spotlight page, with the similar fade, snap, and we've gone through this, you know how to use it. So the blank up here, which if you go really close, you will see that it says name. So I'm gonna name, it's pretty self-explanatory, name. In this case, I'm alone in this game, so you're just gonna see the light shine on me, which looks like this. The first thing that I really emphasize that you do with follow spot, click on open, because in its default position it is very dim and you cannot really see it. So always use open, because it just makes it so much more obvious and so much brighter. So there are a few options here, like head, torso, player, random. Head, random, and torso are the positions on a player's humanoid, aka you. There are two options, player and mouse. Mouse implies is that it goes where your mouse is. To use this feature, click on mouse and press and hold left click. It will go wherever your mouse goes. The issue with using this is that there's a window here, so you can't click through the window, nor can you use watch because there is another invisible barrier in front of the stage. So generally stick to using player. Freeze works in a way where if you click freeze, it will stop tracking. And to bring it back, you would just press player and it will continue tracking. Last thing is the branch panel. So as you cover it, fade is superior in this case, because you generally don't want to make your light for the characters jarring. So I always stick with fade on this light with about 80 to 85 as the fade slider, with the exception of the scene where our character Odysseus is fighting against the other members, servants, I'm not sure what you call them, but yeah, in the Axis and Thrones thing. Hold them down, those scenes. when he pops out, you could actually use a snap because that is more dramatic, like he spawns out nowhere. It's up to you. There are zoom and the intensity options. If you press open here, it overrides whatever is here, so you don't really need to care. Just use open. And intensity, usually just keep it at the default, which is 100, or just don't touch it at all, and it'll also be at 100. Then I bring this on to our last thing, which is pyrotechnics. So this isn't really a light, it's just fog. What do I mean by fog? As you see on stage, there is some fog that's growing. That's all it does. Turn it on, left click, turn it off, right click, and you will see it disappear. And if you want it to just be on for a few seconds, left click the hold button and hold your mouse, or hold the click, let go when you want it. It will create some and it will stop once you let go. And now we just move on to the last few options. So the first thing is this branch button on the main page. Clicking it and clicking on any fixture will just bring up the page that we brought up using the B button. But generally, if you have all three on the main page, you will not have an extra screen to do branching with. So just stick with using the main. Now we have the extras page. This is really used, but there are two options here that are really helpful. First one is kill all. You will need to double click it, but in case there's some light that is just glitching out and you have absolutely no clue how to stop it, double click kill all and it will help with that, hopefully. On this topic, sometimes you may notice when for some reason you changing a queue on a profile affects the JDC, or changing a queue on the JDC affects the parse. So that would be just a loading issue with Flux and your client. So all you have to do is just rejoin the game. It should most likely fix the issue. Another common issue you will see is server standby being permanently stuck on these screens, rendering them unusable. This is unfortunately just an issue that Flux has, and you will not be able to fix it by rejoining. The only solution is to restart the server, which in a private server you can, as the owner of the private server, shut it down. But if it's a public server, your best bet is to just leave and join a new server. The last thing in this extras page that we want to cover is time. So if you've noticed, if you look up when you're in the audience, you will see a sunroof. So if I do nude, you will notice it is significantly now brighter. My favorite option is just using night, because it creates a dark atmosphere so that whatever lights you queue on are not interrupted, or if you have a full darkness, it does not get affected by the light from the outside. The most important thing to mention is that mobile is not supported with the Flux kit. On your screen, you will see a message sent by the owner and developer of the Flux kit saying that mobile support will not come and will most likely never come in the future. So this entire guide is only for computer or laptop users. MacBooks and Macintoshes also work, but mobile devices, consoles, iPad, tablet, and other devices that don't have a mouse to left and right click will not work with the Flux kit. Our developers, or the developers at C.L StudioWorks, cannot change this, nor can they fix this in any way, as it is just how the Flux kit was made. Now, I hope you guys have found this guide useful and you have learned a thing or two about doing lighting and teching inside of this game. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments and I will answer them. or you can drop me a message on Discord at .therealsy. Yes, that period at the start of the username is there. Don't miss it, or you'll be messaging someone else. You can also just find me in the Discord server. My current display name at the time of this video is Happy the Techie, or the display name is Happy the Techie. So just ping me inside the channels if you want to ask me anything. So yeah, there's 3 options. And the other thing I'd just like you to know, if you spot an issue with people coming into this tech room and trolling, head to the report channel, follow their template, and you will most likely get some help from a moderator, which can hopefully resolve any issues you are having. Now, that will be all for this guide. Once again, I hope you found this useful and you gained some knowledge from it. And you can ask me questions or ask me for help in any of those methods. And if you guys want, we can make a follow-up video on when to queue these things. Have a nice day or night or evening or afternoon, wherever in the world you're watching this from. And I will see you next time, most likely in a YouTube theater run, which you can check out on your screen right now. Bye bye.